What up, s'mores? I'm Shannon Morse. Welcome to my YouTube channel all about travel and technology, and today, I know y'all have been waiting for this one, I have a review of the OnePlus 7T. But first, I wanted to say thank you so much to my Buy Me a Coffee friends. Thank you so much to Toby and BPA 3.14, or is that BPA Pi? If you want to support me, check out my Buy Me a Coffee link down below in the show notes. That's buymeacoffee.com/snubs. Alternatively, if you want access to a whole bunch of extras, including high-res photography that I take on my travels, definitely check out my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Shannon Morse. And now, on to the review of the OnePlus 7T. So the OnePlus 7T is $599. As far as the size goes, it's 160.94 millimeters by 74.44 millimeters by 8.13 millimeters, and it weighs 190 grams. There are two main components that I really want to focus on with this review, and those are the screen on the front and the cameras on the back. So this is your beautiful screen. It's a 6.55-inch AMOLED display, which does have the fingerprint sensor on the screen itself, which is great. I love that fingerprint sensor. The screen is 2400 by 1080 as far as the resolution goes, with 402 pixels per inch. This has a 90 Hz display, which means that it is ultra smooth, just like the 7 Pro, which I had reviewed previously. And I gotta say, when you go 90 Hz, you really don't want to go back because it is smooth like butter. This is HDR10+, which means that if you are viewing content that is HDR, you will be able to see it in its original format, which is beautiful. And the screen is in a 20:9 aspect ratio. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with a 20:9 aspect ratio. On the one side, it is ultra wide. It is extremely wide, which looks really good when you're viewing things like movies. But when you're viewing something like a 1080p video on YouTube from one of your friends, and you go to widen it all the way, you're cutting off so much of the image on the top and bottom, kind of takes away from the actual quality of the content. So I tend to keep anything that I am viewing into the center of the screen with the black bars on the two sides. That way I can see all of the content without anything getting cut off. There is a notch at the top of this. It's 31.46% smaller than the 6T. However, if you compare that to the 7 Pro, the 7 Pro had a raising front-facing camera, so there was no notch. It's just very clean. This one, not so much. But even with that notch, you still get a lot of nice quality in this screen. It's ultra bright at 1000 nits, so if you're viewing this in direct sunlight, you're not going to have any issues. It also blocks 40% of blue light projection at night, so if you're using this at nighttime, then you will be a little bit more comfortable with reading things on the screen. Now, speaking of reading mode, that is now available with full color content, which is really cool. So it optimizes saturation, gamut, and contrast for improved clarity and comfort. But man, that aspect ratio on this is so weird. It's just so narrow. So viewing content is really tough on this screen compared to the 7 Pro. I guess I'm just not used to having such a narrow aspect ratio that focuses on widescreen as opposed to something that is a little bit more forgiving. It has matte frosted glass. It is 3D Corning Gorilla Glass with frosted silver or, like mine, glacier blue. It comes with USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type-C, and no, sadly, there is no headphone jack. There are dual stereo speakers with Dolby Atmos at the top and one at the bottom. I did notice that they were very clear. I was pretty impressed with the speakers, so I'm quite happy with listening to content on those speakers. Moving on to those three cameras on the back, those three different lenses. There's a 17mm, a 26mm, and a 51mm. If we start with the middle one, that's your main lens. This one is a 48 megapixel Sony lens with an f1.6 aperture and optical image stabilization. The pixel size is 0.8 microns at 48 megapixels, as mentioned, and 1.6 microns at 12 megapixels. Now, without comparing this to the 3XL or the 7 Pro, which I will do a separate video to do those comparisons, I will say that this camera is very nice. It's very clear. When you take it outside and you want to take photos, HDR content looks excellent. And portrait mode is really, really fun to mess with as well. Now, nightscape is cool. I don't love it, and I'll go into details more on that with my camera comparison. However, doing things like zooming in with the telephoto and making that ultra wide lens are really, really nice. The depth effect and other effects are instantaneous, so you can actually see what's going on during the processing in your camera lens, so you aren't surprised by the picture after the fact, which I also thought was really nice. The ultra wide lens that I mentioned is on the left side, and this one is 177 degrees field of view. That's a really, really nice field of view, which means that you can get excellent landscape shots, excellent photos outside. This will be really nice as a travel companion. It's 16 megapixels at f2.2 aperture, which is also very good. The telephoto lens is on the right side. That one is 12 megapixels with a 2x optical zoom, which is always better than digital. This one is also an f2.2 aperture, and it is 1.0 microns in pixel size. Optical image stabilization is not built into the alternative lenses, but it is built into that main lens. The new macro mode is pretty freaking cool to mess with. This means that you can get 2.5 centimeters away from whatever you are trying to photograph and still get a nice quality. I also mentioned the nightscape mode shortly. This one is available in the main and ultra wide lenses, and that allows for bright, clear, low light photos. This uses varying exposures at multiple frames to create one photo that's supposed to be much brighter and much nicer in low light photography than you would normally get. Now they're using a combination of optical image stabilization and electronic image stabilization for hybrid image stabilization, which is HIS. That means that your videos are supposed to be extremely stable, so you can get 1080p videos at 30 or 60 FPS. You can also do slow motion at 1080p at 240 FPS, or 720p at 480 or 960 FPS. Time-lapse mode, pro mode with RAW, which is wonderful, HDR, panorama, all those different features are also included in the camera settings. Now that front camera, that beautiful little notch you saw, that is a Sony 16 megapixel 1.0 micron lens. It has electronic image stabilization built in with f2.0 aperture. As for video goes, you can get 1080p at 30 FPS, and it does include time-lapse, HDR, face unlock, and face retouching too. And these are all just a bunch of different samples that I took with the lens. Let me know what you think of these down below. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus gives you 15% faster graphics rendering and up to 2.96 gigahertz with Qualcomm's AI engine. The GPU is an Adreno 640. It also includes 8 gigs of RAM and 128 or 256 gigs of UFS 3.0 storage. Now the 256 gig version is only available in select markets. As for LTE goes, it's only on 4G. There is no 5G option yet, and Wi-Fi is up to AC with 2.4 and 5 gig bands. There's also Bluetooth 5.0, which is more secure than 4.0, which is great, and they also have NFC built in. The screen unlock with fingerprint reader is included, and it's supposed to be faster, but honestly, compared to the 7 Pro, I didn't really see a huge difference between the two. It's also very, very hard to test a fingerprint reader because the time varies depending on how you press it. Haptic vibration is included, so that gives you a nice natural, responsive, tactile feedback. I prefer to turn that off whenever I'm typing in the settings because the haptic vibration always bugs me whenever I'm typing so much. A new charger is included in the box. This is the Warp Charge 30T. It is 18% faster than the Warp Charge 3.0, and this one is 5 volts, 6 amps. The phone itself includes a 3800 milliampere battery, and it charges up to 70% in half an hour, which is really fast. It also stays really cool when it's in use, and it also stays really cool when you're charging it, and it stays at consistent speeds when you're charging too, which is very, very nice. The last thing I really wanted to mention with this review is Oxygen OS 10.0, which is based on Android 10, which means a lot of those features that you get from Android 10 are brought over into the Oxygen OS. Yay! You do get the same gestures as stock Android 10, which is great, so if you're already used to those, it's really easy to move over to the OnePlus 7T. The Gallery app, which is on here, now includes secure storage of photos in hidden albums, which is kind of cool. You can also sort or search for scenes or specific people with facial recognition. And mentioning facial recognition, yes, you can unlock your screen with the facial recognition. Zen mode is also available in here, and that disables notifications and applications with personalization and flexibility, so you can customize that based on your needs. So this is a $599 phone, and honestly, it's a really good phone. It's quality. However, I don't think it was for me. Without going into too much detail, I felt like the camera on the 3XL is still better than the 6T, and the aspect ratio of this one is just a little weird for me. It's just a little bit too narrow. However, I do love the fact that OnePlus has included that fingerprint sensor in the front, which is so easy to use. And they have those nice thin bezels, which you also had on the 7 Pro with that curved display. Now, I will say I still like the 7 Pro a little bit more as far as the screen quality goes. And that 90 hertz screen that you get used to after a while whenever you're scrolling through stuff, it is so hard to go back to something that is not 90 hertz after using this device. It's tough. Other phones begin to feel kind of laggy whenever you're not using 90 hertz after you've used this for a few days. Do you have any questions about the OnePlus 7 Pro or the OnePlus 7T, which was the new one? I'm very curious what you think of this phone as well. It wasn't necessarily my favorite phone on the market, but it is a really, really good option. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more tech content just like this. Now I'm gonna get started on the camera comparison. Let me know if you want any specific type of photography to happen while I'm doing that camera comparison. And until then, I'm Shannon Morse. Thank you so much for watching my s'mores. Thank you for supporting me on Patreon. I'll see you next time. Bye!